Good morning, fam. We are back. I'm coming in here with a red hot message that is on my heart today. So if you are new to the Embodied Business Show, welcome. Today is a solo episode from me, your host, Case Warwick. I'm super excited to dive into this topic today because if there's one thing I'm seeing across the board online and both with my clients is the question of what does leadership actually look like? Embodied business. Now, if you're playing in this world of I'm stepping in and suddenly you notice yourself wanting to contract, wanting to collapse, wanting to pull back, here's what I want to talk about today. The 3 things that you need if you're going to step in as a leader inside an industry, and whether it be the coaching industry, whether it be the building industry, whether it be any kind of industry, there is 3 key things that you need to be able to adopt and be with if you want to deeply step into your leadership. Now, there is so much more to leadership than this conversation. I really want to presence this, but what I do know to be incredibly true is that if you do not have these 3 pieces, it's going to be very easy to fall to the wayside every single time. Now, what I mean by fall to the wayside is there is a magic that is birthed when you start to move through different levels of leadership and you start to step into the embodiment of who you are in your leadership and really take up space, like really claim your space in the industry that you are in. And unfortunately, for a lot of people, they've gone into the space of like, well, I'm just going to protect myself. I'm just going to put my guard up. I'm just going to all these things. And it often keeps them separate also from their clients. What most people aren't talking about is when you put protections up from one area, you're also putting protections up energetically everywhere else. So I want to talk about these 3 things. And if you haven't yet developed them, this is where it's time to look for a mentor. If you want to join us in Embodied Business, you can. It's time to really solidify at your core who you are. If you can't do these 3 things powerfully, the chances of you being an embodied leader is going to fall short. Simple. That is a very simple piece. So let's dive into it, shall we? The first one I want to talk about today is the ability to speak your truth. Now, this might seem like a very, very simple one. And for most of it, it is. But how do you hold it energetically? I see a lot of people wanting to be known as a thought leader, wanting to be known as the go-to in the industry, and whenever they're asked their opinion, they find ways to skirt around it. Being able to fully embody what you believe is truthful is something that's going to allow you to really stand the test of time. There's a lot of people inside all industries, not just one, but whenever a new hype or a new craze comes up, they drop their messaging and they move into the messaging of the current moment. And whilst this can be a great marketing tactic, what it also does is it can lose trust with your audience. So it's really important that you keep anchoring into your core message of what you're here for, what you're here to create, and allow yourself to speak your truth powerfully, because if you don't speak your truth, it will hold you in a double bind. And what I mean by that is, let's just say you've had a deep, dark past, and suddenly you have an experience that could truly support your clients and all your people. And you don't want to share that because you're like, well, I don't want people to know that part about me. I don't want to have to talk about those particular pieces. What happens there is you actually begin to dilute your message, essentially. And so there's an old saying of, if you do not own your story, it will own you. Now, even if you're to never share your personal stuff online, I barely ever do, right? But hardly anyone that I know who is very high level does this. However, they're also very clean with their personal story. If you were to ever share your personal story online, would it rattle you? Would it shake you? Would it take you out of your ability to hold your leadership? Because where something has power over you, it can also take it away from you. So we want to understand the power of you owning your story and being able to speak your truth fluently. Now, the key things that often come into this where people don't allow themselves to speak their truth is they're usually protecting something or someone else. So if there's a part of you that's like, I can't say that because my mom won't like it, Or if there's a part of you that's like, oh, I don't want them to look bad, and you're denying your truth, you're getting in the way of frequency. So it's incredibly important that you understand the blocks and the pieces that are getting in the way of you actually speaking your truth and what you fully are in full resonance. I cannot stress this enough. And I know it sounds like, oh yeah, I speak my truth all the time, but if you are filtering yourself, if you feel anything in your chest as I'm saying this, I guarantee you there's medicine in this for you to look at what is actually holding you back from literally landing deeply in this space. The second piece I want to talk to, and this one's quite big, right? Because I see this a lot when a trend comes up or when something moves through the industries and it gets really powerful and it gets a lot of recognition, but people start to get angry when someone else has copied them, okay? If you are not ready for people to copy you, you are not ready to be a leader. Straight up. I will speak very, very, very simply there. The reason being that if people are copying you, they are inspired by you. And so if you're finding that energy too much and you think that they're going to take from you, you do not have the understanding that we're all in it together. This can often keep you on the outer. It can keep you on the outskirts. And what I love to really reframe my clients with is like, if someone's copying you, A, they're inspired, and B, they're also in co-creation with your message. You say you're here to impact, yet the minute someone says the same thing as you, you're like, no, can't be them. So you keep separation from the actual thing that you say that you're desiring. If you want to impact people in this way, it doesn't have to be you. When we understand that there is more of the pie always getting made, that there is always more than enough, we are able to fully land in our thought leadership and speak our truth. Now, to double on number one, what I often see is when people start to notice someone else is copying them, and I've done this in the past, right? But it's one of those things that if someone's copying them, they then start to dilute their message because they don't want someone else to take from them. Once again, this is your fear. Scarcity leading the way. Here's what I want you to know. When you get trapped in a competitive way of thinking, you are also going to trap yourself from ever getting creative. The brilliant thing is like, if you're actually really powerful and if you're actually in your creative essence, you're always going to be one step ahead of the person who's copying you anyway. So why does it actually matter? Why does your ego have to make that mine? And I have a beautiful story on this topic because years ago, it was one of my first group programs. It wasn't my first, but it was one of the first ones. I launched a program called the Embodied Woman. Now, for those of you who want to go back to my previous work where I was working with women, you can go and buy that on my website. However, I launched this program, and within a week of me launching it, I've seen 2 other women launch a program with the same name. I was furious. I was like, how dare they? Oh, I was so cranky. And so I deleted them both off my socials. And I was like, no, they're not going to have any more room to copy me. Anyway, I was sitting in meditation later that day, and I had this message, right, come through of like, maybe they won't. Maybe they won't. And later on that month, I just so happened to be reading The Biology of Belief at the same time. And it's where Bruce Lipton talks about how a seed is planted, how a thought is planted, where it goes into the quantum, and whoever picks up or is on that frequency picks up the thought. And I was like, oh, maybe that's what happened. Maybe they were just on the same frequency. These women were very similar to me. They hold very similar energy. And I was able to just immediately just like, you know what? Cool. They're going to teach it their way. I'm going to teach it my way. And it's still my thing. It's still the ability for me to teach this medicine the way that I desire to teach it. So I was able to let it go. And so now whenever someone is in the space of copying, whether it be myself, my clients, or anyone else, the one thing that I always come back to is they may speak the same words, but they will never speak the same frequency. They can never teach it in the way that you teach it. So once again, to harness in on the core part of this message is, if you're not willing for someone to copy you, you're not available to be a leader yet. So I want you to really sit with that. If I truly am a stand for this work being bigger than myself, can I let someone else share the message as well? And yes, I'm not making plagiarism okay. I'm not telling you all of those things are fine. What I am telling you is how you hold it matters. So if you're caught up in this, it's mine, you're also creating separation from universal source energy. So just notice where you play, how you be with it, and what you're creating in your space with it every time you go deeply into it's mine. All right. The final piece I want to talk into, and this one, I said last one was big, but this one's probably the biggest. This is by far the one that gets most people and isn't allowing them to fully lean in because of the fear that it can create. Now, if you're not willing to do this, I dare say you don't have a deep enough why. Now, what I mean by that is you are not connected emotionally enough to the mission that you say you are. Are you willing to take arrows for it? Are you willing to stand up against all those who say against it? If you cannot answer yes to that question, there is not a deep enough connection point to the thing that you're trying to create. And we see this to be a little bit controversial over the time when the big C word was around, right? There was people who conformed. There was people who were like, you know what, I just have to do this for X, Y, and Z. And, you know, I know personally in our family, we had positions lost and because of what our stance was. And the thing is, if you're not willing to stand for something, you will fall for everything. So if you're willing to be a leader, if you're willing to truly step in, if you're really willing to go that extra mile, are you willing to take arrows for the thing that you say you believe in? This once again links back to the copying. This once again links back to, are you fully in your truth with it? Because when you can embody it, I mean, deeply embody it with everything that you have, I promise you, then you are ready to really take a hold of your own leadership. Leadership starts here. And when we allow ourselves to be an industry leader, when we allow ourselves to be someone who is at the forefront of the magic of the medicine that's bringing it through, these are the pieces that we need to start thinking about. Because if we can't get these pieces right, these 3 little pieces right, that's your work. That's what you get to clean up. It's connection into what you're really, really here for and getting out of the way. Because when we attach it to mine, when we attach it to why I'm here, all the things, we're just getting in the way of source. So I hope this is giving you some insight into how our egos can get in the way of our own leadership. And I really, really love for you to share what you learned in the comments below or send me through a DM on Instagram. I would love to hear your insights. Have a great day. Until next time, see you later. Embodied